Everyone, welcome to the Rangers Reviews morning briefing. It's Friday, the 2nd of August. The new season is here. It's been a long summer. Chris Jack will judge if it's been worth it tomorrow when Rangers travel to face Hearts, but we're of course going to look ahead to that. It's press conference day as well ahead of the new season. Rangers have signed Robin Proper last night, so plenty to get into. Chris, as I say, it's been a busy summer. The football's back tomorrow. Are you looking forward to it? Yes or no?
Can you ask me again once I've seen this side in action? No, I think that there's always an excitement at the start of the season. There's always something to look forward to. There's new players in this group. The season offers so many possibilities. Rangers should be challenging for silverware. You go into every season, perhaps in this term, not expecting to win the league, given where the team are, but there's always that hope. There's certainly that demand, and also the cups. There's a real demand that Rangers go and win them as well. In terms of European ambitions, who knows? You're obviously heading out for the Dynamo Kiev game next week. I think it's a tricky tie for Rangers, a winnable one, but it looks like a tricky one. But I think there is. We get to match day -1, as is the modern phrase for it now. We're good to get back up to the training ground, see the manager, see what player we get, and then also press conference day today, and then we're both heading through to Tynecastle tomorrow. So it's a difficult first game for Rangers. It's certainly not an easy one, but it's a chance to lay down not quite a marker of their intent, but it's a chance to kind of perhaps allay some of the fears that I think a number of the fans have. So an interesting 36 hours or so coming up. But as we've seen over the course of the summer, every day is interesting when you're immersed in the world of Rangers.
That is very true. Mark says, morning lads, ask that question again in the month, Joshua, and I think Mark puts it pretty well. Just a quick reminder, as you know by now, this episode is brought to you by our sponsors, MBH Boilers and Weissman. MBH Boilers is a multi-award-winning family-run plumbing and heating company covering all of mainland Scotland. Recently crowned Family Business of the Year, which is a nice award at the 2024 Fife Business Awards. Partnering with Weissman, a German engineered, highly awarded boiler manufacturer. They make a perfect match for homes across Scotland, and all the relevant links are in the description. Right, Chris, we're going to speak about Robin Proper because obviously he has since signed since yesterday's morning briefing. We'll get into Hearts as well. Speak about what we think the team might be. Obviously, an injury update today at the press conference will help that and get to as many comments as we can. First and foremost, we've got a scout report of Robin Proper on the website. It was confirmed yesterday. It's one that seemed to move pretty quickly in the background over the last couple of days. Rangers clearly needed someone to replace Connor Goldson. We can get into a little bit of how he compares in a stylistic sense to Goldson. On the face of it, what do you make of the transfer? Because a week ago, Rangers didn't have Cherney and Proper in the building. 26 and 30, they're both experienced individuals. The squad still clearly isn't ready, as it should be at the end of August, but perhaps is a little bit more ready for the start of the season with those two experienced players in. But what do you make of the signing and the player from what you've kind of seen and spoken about and heard of so far?
I think it's an area of the side that Rangers clearly had to strengthen even before Connor Goldson was allowed to leave the club and also do that deal to head out to Cyprus. I think it's important that we see Proper has to be an improvement on Goldson, not just a replacement for, because that defence last season ultimately wasn't good enough to help Rangers win the title. I think from what we've seen so far in pre-season, it's clear that the back four is not the strongest area of the side. So it's not just a case of you're bringing in a body because you've lost a body. No, I think he has to be an improvement on Goldson. He has to be someone who takes the standard of that defensive unit up. Interesting to see who plays alongside him. I think at the start of the window, people had all but written off Ben Davies. He's still here. And Ciala, from what we've seen, looks very raw. I'd be very surprised, despite Derek's shout the other day there, I'd be very surprised if he starts at Tynecastle tomorrow. So for me, it's between Suter and Davies. You're then looking at Balogun, I think, will be more of a squad option, not someone you're going to rely on too much, but a good experienced head to have in the building. I think that experience box is a big one that proper ticks, and it's very rare that you can go and sign a captain from somewhere, certainly of a club as established in their domestic league as FC Twente. I've also European football this season as well. So to be able to go and sign someone who's clearly not just a big player for them on the field, but a big figure in the dressing room and around the club, to be able to bring a figure like that into Rangers, I think is really important. The manager did say, I think it was 2 or 3 days after we returned from the pre-season trip to Holland, he spoke about adding more experience to this group, and I think the last couple of deals we've seen that. Czerny, good profile, has played a lot of football, proper at 30 odd, has clearly played a lot of football, and I think it's two more encouraging signings. These guys are not project players, these guys are not ones who are brought in, we'll see how they do and we'll maybe try and develop them over the next couple of seasons. These guys are here to be starting 11 players, and if they can then live up to that expectation.
I think we might be losing Chris slightly, so I'm going to let him reconnect to his office Wi-Fi in there, and I'm going to speak about Robin proper for a minute. And luckily, I've been watching him all of yesterday, so plenty to get into while Chris reconnects with us. I think he is back there. A few questions about Proper. I'll start with this one. Gordon Bond, is Proper a left or right-sided centre-back? It's an interesting one, Gordon, because we've got, I should say, a scout report that you'll see on the website or on your app. It's in the links in the description as well. He's right-footed, but he's played a lot of the last couple of seasons back on the left, as Chris zooms back in to join me there. The office, the bunker Wi-Fi not strong this morning, Chris. He's played a lot on the left side in the last couple of seasons. Now, we tend to always think, you need maybe a left foot on the left and a right foot on the right in the ideal situation. It's explained at more length why he's played on the left-hand side in the piece, but there's a few interesting facets. Namely, I think he's really comfortable on the ball. He's not someone who's going to carry the ball into midfield like John Souttar, but he's very comfortable inviting pressure, which I think is an important point, because if you compare him to Connor Goldson hit an excellent diagonal and could pass well at points. He was a better passer over distance, I think, than short distances. But he wasn't someone who really waited for the opposition and kind of triggered their press and invited pressure to play through. I don't think he was quite as comfortable doing that. And again, you wouldn't have seen, I think this speaks to the differences in Proper and Goldson in terms of maybe their mobility and their ability to play higher up the pitch and also play on the left-hand side. You wouldn't have seen Goldson play on that left-hand side. It wouldn't have felt like a natural fit. So I always think when a right footer can play on the left, it shows that they're a more flexible player. They can play across different zones of the pitch, which is an important thing to consider. Pete Lawrence says Proper looks to be a dominant type, strong in the air. We need a strong leadership character as well. Just another aspect that really stood out to me, Chris, when I was watching him yesterday and the day before, and again directs people towards that scout report. He's much more comfortable. I think if one of the areas of weakness in Goldson's game, and listen, it happened so quickly as exit in relation to Proper coming in. I think in particular, the first 4 years of Goldson's time at Rangers, the consistency that he displayed, none of that should be forgotten for what was a poor end to his time at Rangers. But I don't think he suited Clement's style of play as much as previous managers, because it was more isolated, more one-on-ones, covering bigger areas. And if you think about a goal that Rangers have conceded in a lot of Old Firm games, it's attacking the space in front of the defence. So the goal they conceded, Keogh scored in the 2-1 defeat at Parkhead in December, which was a worldly goal, but it was him picking the ball up just ahead of the defence, just behind the midfield. And I personally never felt that Goldson was brilliant at getting up in those situations, going tight man to man, jumping into the midfield. I think Proper is better at that. I think it's more natural for him, like a Leon Balogun, to go and get tight to players, and he has the mobility to play slightly higher. I mean, those are the two things that stand out to me, Chris. But just on the point of being a strong leader, having spoken to just a couple of people who have worked with Proper, that's one of the main takeaways that certainly I've kind of gleaned on his career so far. The fact he's a late developer. Rangers really need that, don't they? They've really needed fresh impetus in their leadership group. He's captained FC Twente, and I guess remains to be seen if he'll play tomorrow. But I guess he'll be required to get up to speed pretty quickly. But he's not coming into this dressing room to be led by 5 or 6 other individuals. He's clearly someone that, as well as the what he brings on the pitch, Clement and Niels Koppen have identified what they think he can bring in a leadership capacity, which, if you look at the average age of players that Rangers had signed prior to Czerny and Proper arriving, that's going to be really important too.
Not sure what happened with the Wi-Fi. My signal is strong there, but they do see pre-season as a time to get all these issues out of the system. So rest assured, from here on in, there will be no technical difficulties whatsoever to any of the shows that we conduct over the next 10 months or so. I think that leadership quality or proper, I think that's perhaps one of the main attractions the manager and Neil Scotland have known for several weeks that Conor Goldson would be allowed to leave the club. I don't think we expect it to be Aris. That one then moved fairly quickly at first and then dragged on and then finally got done. But it's been evident that Conor would be allowed to leave the squad. Therefore, he had to be replaced. And as I said earlier on, he had to be improved on. And that's not just bringing in a player who can play centre half. It's bringing in someone who is a big figure, as Conor was. Also had that vice captaincy. Was very experienced, was a big leader within that dressing room. And you also look at some of the other figures that have left the club over the course of the summer. Now, there's been a lot of talk about this leadership group over the last couple of seasons. Rangers 2 summers ago lost Al McGregor, lost Scott Arfield, lost even a big figure like Phil Hollander. You then lose like Sir Ryan Jack, like Sir John Lundstrom, Barisic, who, for his faults, had been there for a long time and knew the standards and knew the game and knew that type of thing. So you have taken a lot of nous, you've taken a lot of Rangers know-how out of that over the last couple of seasons. That's not going to be replaced in a winner just because you've signed the guy who was captain in Holland. It will take him time to get used to the club and to understand the fans and to understand the game here and to settle into the team. But you look at his profile and you think he should be able to handle that transition a lot more easily and be able to go through that process far quicker than, for example, a Cortez or a Hefty or someone like that who's also younger. There's language issues at play with both them as well. So I think the manager it's important he had to build a squad as well as building a team this summer. It wasn't a case of you just go and get the 2 or 3 final pieces of the jigsaw and that turns Rangers from close challengers into potential champions. There's a lot of work to be done in terms of rebuilding the squad, be able to rebuild that team, and it's going to take different profiles, different personalities, and someone like Proper. So I think that experience box, that leadership box, should be big ones that he's ticking because that has been taken of the squad. Also, there will be a lot of talk about Tav over the course of what remains in the window. He also spoke to RTV yesterday. It looks like he'll play at Tynecastle on Saturday.
Chris, just to interrupt you there, you're a popular member normally in the chat. You're getting some undue heat, so I'm just going to bring this up. Can Chris Jack answer why he broke the story in the summer that Tav had been stripped of the captaincy when he hasn't been? Just to clarify for everyone, you did not say that. There's been a lot of speculation over James Tavernier's future. There's been a bid for him a few weeks ago, as you say. He spoke yesterday to Rangers TV, but just to jump to your defence in the chat there, that was not your headline.
No, that was not my story. A very interesting one, but not my story. So if that allegation can be refuted, and I accept full apology as soon as it's forthcoming within the chat. I said not my story, that one.
Yeah, on Proper as well, and another interesting point. A lot has been made of his age, and Stevie and myself spoke about this yesterday. The fact that Rangers' wage bill last season was way too big. One of the many suffering elements of their squad building over the last few years is that wages have increased. Players haven't been moved on at the right time. Players have been brought in under different managers who have been more important than say their status in another manager's squad, and because of that, you had the wage bill as high as it was last season. You've had so many players out injured as well. Proper is on less wages than Conor Goldson. Rangers, obviously, the fact that Conor Goldson left 2 years into that 4-year contract, he will sign a lot of wages in that regard. He is 30 years old. I believe the initial contract he signed is a 2-year one, Chris. An important point to make, I think, is there's a difference between age and not to make it rhyme, but age and stage in a footballing sense. Now, I'm not going to pretend I've watched Robin Proper for his whole career, but from looking into a little bit, he's played 349 games in his career, quite widely regarded as a bit of a late bloomer if you look at when he started to make regular appearances. Goldson, who I think we saw towards the end of last season, probably suffered a bit from the amount of football that he's had to play, and let's I think remember in that context to compliment him for that, because throughout the last number of years, there's not been many Rangers players who have performed as consistently and been as readily available as himself and James Tavernier. But both of those players, again, and the amount of running that Philippe Clement's system demands, and you heard players like Connor Goldson speak about that. He spoke about that after the Ayr United's game in the Scottish Cup, how the running distances had gone up. I don't think it's any coincidence that Rangers really burned out from March onwards, and Clement obviously has reiterated that and the need for a pre-season. But Goldson's made 309 appearances for Rangers in the last 6 years. Proper has made 349 appearances in his whole career. So I don't know exactly how they level up, what the longevity of their career is. They could play until the exact same time. Goldson's clearly someone who looks after himself really well and has forged a brilliant career after the difficulties he had as a young footballer with his health. But 30-year-old in a 2-year contract in the initial sense, the amount of games he's played, he's just come off his best season probably as he captained FC20 to third in the Eredivisie. Again, Rangers do need a bit of experience, but I guess it's when you sign those experienced players, you need to make it work for you as well. Not handing out a 4 or 5 year contract, not breaking your wage structure for someone who might not be at that place in 3 or 4 years. And certainly on the surface of things, do you think this deal looks to kind of tick that box?
I think the chairman has mentioned a couple of times about lessons being learned, and you would hope that is one that has been learned. You look at Rangers' transfer business over the last couple of seasons. One, it's not been good enough in terms of quality of player that has been brought in, but you then look at some of the financial sides of them. The wage bill has gone up and up and up. The return for that wage bill has not been there. And I think this summer is a chance to almost address that issue as well. Yes, you have to address the quality of the team on the pitch. You have to address how the side is going to operate. But the wage bill has to be more reflective of where Rangers are. The allegation that the board don't spend money doesn't quite tie in, because enough money has been put towards the squad. It's just that whoever has sanctioned these deals and the players themselves, they've then not held up their end of the bargain, I feel like. So it looks like Proper is an example of that lesson being learned. I think I mentioned this with Derek on the show the other day there. People were asking about the Connor Goldson transfer fee and why is it not more, and surely we could have got that. Ultimately, the fee is not really that important for someone like Goldson, because it's the wages that allow you to then reinvest. It's what you can then do with one of the bigger earners within the squad. How can you recycle that? Can you go and get 2 or 3 different players to improve 2 or 3 different areas of the side, bringing the average age down, bringing the wage bill down, and this summer acts as a real opportunity for Rangers to do that. I think again there's been a bit of talk about why we're signing someone who's over 30. What happened to the player trading model? Well, player trading model doesn't just mean that you sign everyone at 21 for £1 million and sell them 2 seasons later for 10. There has to be that balance. So someone like Cortez could perhaps fall into that model. Someone like Conor Barron falls into that model. Proper clearly doesn't. The Rangers are not going to make their money back on him. But if he is successful and he plays a leading role in Rangers being successful on the pitch, then that player trading deal has been a good one. And I think people have to be mindful of that balance. Not every player has to be over 30 and play 300 games. Not every player has to be a potential wonder kid. It's a squad game. It has to have that balance.
Yeah, and again, to reiterate, I think if you take away Liam Kelly, the 6 players that had arrived permanently under Niels Coppen had an average age of 20 and a half. That's very young. And I don't think, Chris, if you look at Rangers players at the moment, if you were to we'll speak about the strongest starting 11 tomorrow, I think you take players like Ridvan or Roscoe Cortez or Mohamed Diomande. We've not seen quite as much of Cortez, but they're players that I think are brave on the ball, that don't look like they freeze inside Ibrox. They'll take responsibility. So it's not always about, okay, you need to add old players to the young players. It's trying to squad build collectively to get the right numbers of leaders in, the right numbers of project players, etc., etc. Do Rangers have that balance right? Yeah, probably not, but I think Proper and Cherney are a step in the right direction. Let's get to a few Comments, Colin Matthew says, a day before the season starts, and there it does. Havana Shanat, you said it, Colin. Nice. Have a well-deserved long weekend. Ewan, friend of the show, best of luck for the new season, gentlemen. Logan says, think tomorrow's too early for proper. Expect Cherney to start. However, Chris, let's talk about tomorrow's team, because we're going to hear after the press conference about injuries, and it'll give us a bit of a better idea as to what Philippe Clement is thinking ahead of this one. It's a difficult game going to Tynecastle, no doubt about it. CGM55 says Butland, Sterling, Suter, Proper, Ridvan, Barron, Diamandi, Lawrence, Cortez, Cherney and Dessers is our best 11 at the moment. I tend to agree with him. Is Proper going to play on the right or left moving forward? He can do both. If you look at the complement of Rangers centre-backs at the moment, probably it's more weighted to the left. You've got two left footers in Nsiala and Ben Davies. John Suter's obviously played a lot on the left last season, but he is more natural on the right-hand side. Leon Balogun can do either, but again, has played a lot of his football at Rangers on the left-hand side. But if I was to throw you that team tomorrow, depending if Proper is ready to go into the starting 11, is that what you think gives Rangers the best chance of coming back along the M8 with the result tomorrow?
Going on that side, I think the only point I would raise is Tavernier for Sterling. The manager addressed Dujon's fitness after the game in Berlin last weekend, and I think it's a case of you're putting a Sterling in who has not had a clean pre-season. You're also potentially putting a Tavernier in who has not had a clean pre-season. And I think it probably comes down to who's the fittest. Now, who does the manager think can get through the minutes or get through more minutes and be able to add more to the side. There's been this debate over the course of the summer about Dujon will be the next Rangers right back. He will be the Tavernier successor. I think that is the case. I think that's how Rangers see it. But is he in the right place physically to go in to Tynecastle and go in and do the required job? So I wouldn't be surprised if Tav plays. But that decision is being made fully the knowledge that last weekend, that game in Berlin, he was miles off it. So he is going to have come on a lot through that period. But Sterling wasn't fit enough to make that game. Now, it was only a friendly. I dare say it was a slightly different situation. He could have been risked. That depends on the manager's view. But we know how strict the manager can be in terms of the minutes that people have to have got through, the number of sessions they have to have played. He's a stickler for that type of thing. So you would think if Tav played last weekend, he's closer to starting this weekend than Dujon Sterling.
Yeah, Ken is saying Sterling won't play tomorrow, but will play in midweek again. Clement said to yourself out in Berlin last week, Chris, that he's done 3 times as much of a pre-season this year compared to previous years, but it's still a case of he cannot fix the issues, so to speak, in 6 weeks. But definitely, if you look at that area over pre-season when Sterling's played, he's done well. But the Tavernier, who's missed a lot of pre-season, I think that is an area that will concern some people heading in to tomorrow's game. Aldo, good friend of the show, says, my team, Butland, Sterling, Proper, Balogun, Chefty, there's a surprise there, Dio, Barron, Lowry, Cortez, Dessers, Cherney. Do you think Vaclav Cherney is going to start? Chris, he's the player actually that I would say out of this summer window I'm the most excited to see at Rangers this season. Famous last words and all that. But do you think he could start on that right-hand side tomorrow, because Ross McCausland and Scott Wright have kind of traded that position throughout pre-season, haven't they? I mean, it's Lawrence is going to play, Dessers is going to play. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Still not seen Hamza Gamani, and Danilo obviously continues to return from a serious injury. It's going to be Diomande and Barr in the middle. Some question marks about the configuration of the centre of defence. Cherney, for you, do you expect to see him line up?
I would think so. I think even just from giving the fans a boost point of view, it would be a big call from the manager to put him in. You know, if that team comes out at 11:30 or so tomorrow, and Scott Wright is in it or Ross McCausland's in it and Cherney's on the bench, you know what the reaction is going to be on social media. It'll be a case of the Rangers admin turning their notifications off and throwing their phone away for an hour. It's not going to go down well. I think if Cherney has been in and around the squad, obviously for longer than Proper, he couldn't make his debut last week because the paperwork wasn't done in time. He just couldn't get everything signed off and through all the various channels. He's been in and around the squad the last couple of days. He will have had a couple of training sessions. I think you have to put him in. I'm not sure what pre-season he's had before he came, so I don't know where he's at fitness wise. But I think it's a good game. As a first day of the season, everyone has got some form of expectation. Some of the glasses are slightly fuller than others. I think it's a game you put him in, you go and see what he can do.
Yeah.
If he is burst after an hour, you've then got McCausland on the bench to go in and see out the game. I think it's a case of you give him a start, go and let him see what he can do. Complete, not an unknown quantity, because people do know about him. It's not as if they've signed him from absolutely nowhere. Mm-hmm. But Hearts might not know him as much about him as they do McCausland or Wright, someone that they've faced previously. So I think it's a case of you put him in, let's see what he can do. And as I say, if he's running his race after an hour, you do then have those other options on there. But I'd certainly like to see him get a start.
Yeah, one of my pet peeves in football, and this might not be a sensible opinion, but is managers not playing a new signing for a number of weeks to get them up to speed. I think Czerny, he's direct. If you look at his last Eredivisie season in particular, and obviously he's went to Wolfsburg, they've used wing backs, it's not quite worked out. But if you look at his last season in the Eredivisie in particular, when I think it was 25 goals and assists altogether, the thing that stood out to me, again, just having watched him a little bit, is how direct he is. Being a left footer on the right, he gives Rangers a balance that they've lacked for a long time, especially with the way that they use fullbacks under Philippe Clement these days as well. I'd like to see him going straight when, as you say, Chris, if he only lasts 50, 60 minutes, you have the energy of Wright and McCausland to bring off the bench. Rangers are going to need quality to go and win that game against Hearts tomorrow, who finished third last season, who didn't beat Rangers last season, and that's an important caveat. They'll want to rectify that heading into this new campaign. I'd like to see Václav Czerny on the right for Rangers. A few more comments to get through. Matthew Adams says he'd like to see Diomande as a 10 with Sterling and Barron in holding midfield. And Thomas would rather see Chefty on the left than Matondo if Cortez isn't ready. Cortez, another one who's obviously had a little bit of a managed pre-season, but again, I'd expect him to start and maybe do 50, 60 minutes. An important point to mention is that Clement said, and I can't remember which interview it is, there's been so many, but he said that the team is not ready yet to play effectively 2 games in 4 to 5 days, whatever it will be. So they'll be effectively, I think what you'll do, and you've seen him try this throughout pre-season, not quite be 2 starting 11s against Hearts and Dynamo Kiev, but it will be close to that, Chris. And I think he'll try to really utilise his squad. So that's probably important to note. But no doubt the Rangers need to play a starting 11 as they can head to Tynecastle tomorrow. Just as we round up, Chris, listen, the Rangers squad is not where they'd like it to be yet. There has been a lot of change in the summer. I think if you'd said to people that you'd be able to get some significant wages off the books, if not all, by August 2nd. That does signify some change for me. This is a transfer window where the outgoings are as significant, if just in what they represent, as the incomings. Clement hasn't got the squad fully where he wants it to be, but he's had a pre-season now. 8 new arrivals this summer. This is as much as it's a difficult game, Rangers need to go and win this. Of course, speaking plainly and obvious, but also just for the fact that this is kind of the start, it feels like, of his real opportunity at the club. It's his first full season after a full pre-season. What do you expect, just from a kind of style of play point of view? Do you expect to see much different having watched Rangers throughout pre-season? Because as I've said there, although there is still work to be done, the winning, I guess, needs to start now. And as we saw last season, if you don't start the season in the right fashion, then it's going to very quickly catch up with you.
I think in terms of if you look at the pre-season as a whole, it's not been overly encouraging. I think it has to be said. I thought last weekend, certainly going forward, it was much more like it. Dessers was good, Lawrence was good, Diomande was excellent. There was more to give us a bit of hope from that final game. I thought before that, certainly the early ones, yes, they're more about like game time and match minutes, that type of thing. But I don't think there's been a lot of positives to take from pre-season. But as I said earlier on in the show, it's going to Tynecastle, it's a chance to not lay down a huge marker and start roaring, we will be champions. But it would be a potentially difficult game taken care of. It's another game. It would just give people, I think, a bit more something to almost hold on to. Even if the performance isn't there, it would be a case of if you can get through Tynecastle, you then go to Kiev. If you can get a positive result there, you then bounce into the next couple of league games. The Old Firm game obviously comes early in the season. We're already thinking, well, what position will Rangers be in heading into that one? What position will Celtic be in heading into that one? So many imponderables almost over these first few weeks of the season. But there is, I think that, again, as I said right at the top of the show when you asked about the campaign as a whole, if you can't be enthused at this stage, then what's the point in turning up? You have to have something to hold on to. And interestingly, some breaking news that we can.
I feel like I'm on a live news channel here, Chris, because Philippe Clement has just signed a 4-year deal at Rangers. Now, there's been murmurings throughout the summer that, especially, there's been the noise about the Belgium job in relation to Clement. There's been murmurings that he would go and sign a new and improved contract, but it has literally just dropped about 20 seconds ago. Philippe Clement has signed a new deal at Rangers. I mean, that's a statement heading into the new season, Chris, isn't it?
It certainly is. In terms of, I don't think that's the signing people expected over the course of the summer, but it's certainly a real statement. It's the manager and the chairman both have spoken about their relationship and where they are being all in. I think is a phrase that John used the other day there, to go and hand the manager a 4-year deal just a few months into his reign. That's a real statement of intent. It's a real statement of backing. So not quite I said not the news that we expected this morning, but I think it gives us a talking point when we got to press conference later on. But we weren't exactly short of things to fire at Philippe, but not another one to add to the list.
Yeah, a question here, Pevkeeper saying that shows stability for the future. I think absolutely. We'll get into a little bit more discussion. It might be a slightly prolonged morning briefing today, as you say, a lot of talking points. Chris, I'll read you what Clement and John Bennett had to say. Speaking after signing the deal, Philippe Clement said, "I have a really open and transparent relationship with the board. In every meeting we've had, you feel the passion and desire to make the club better. It's the same for me. I've fallen in love with the club, the fans, the stadium, and the city. I see huge potential now. We need to make the club better and stronger in every department. That's our goal. We are really aligned about that." Chairman John Bennett added, "As I intimated in my recent Rangers TV interview, Philippe and I had a far-reaching conversation at the end of May. Our shared ambition was clear, the rebuild of Rangers men's first team for the long term as well as the short term. At that meeting, we shook hands on this new contract and the board is delighted the formalities have been concluded." Chris, there's two sides to this. I guess some people will say, look, Clement started really well at Rangers, won 18 of his first 20 games. But he's obviously still got questions to answer. But I think looking at the comments and trying to gauge an opinion, obviously, quickly on this, what Rangers have lacked clearly over the last 4 years when they've had 4 managers is stability. And this certainly gives you that. They needed a figurehead, a consistent figurehead. They've needed the sporting structure behind the scenes. And this certainly seems, a 4-year contract, 2028, that seems like a pretty big step in that direction, doesn't it? Mm-hmm.
It does. It's I think we've this has been muted over the last couple of weeks, but it has I think it's still almost a bit of a surprise given the timing of it, given that there are bigger deals to be done right now. It's fair to say, as we've just spoken about over the last half hour. I think there's a lot of work still to be done on this squad. But the board clearly feel, and the chairman clearly feels that Clement is the right man to take that forward. Now he says in there in a statement he's fallen in love with the club and the city. That's great, but now he has to deliver. Now a big show of faith has been put in him, and he has to go and deliver on that over the next few seasons. I think he had enough. For a manager that didn't win the league, for a manager that didn't win the Scottish Cup, he came into this summer with credit in the bank. Also winning the League Cup early on in his reign was great. Mm-hmm. European aspect of it, certainly that result in Betis was great. I think towards the end of the season, perhaps more doubts crept in, certainly in terms of his tactics and some of the bigger games. I've spoken before on the show about that number 10 role in certain footballs, and how I would like that to change. If it does, then I think that stands Rangers are a better chance of going on and being successful. I don't think it's a deal that people would have been clamouring for. But you look at the comments that we've seen quickly on social media and the comments that's on the show. I think it's one that more people will get behind than won't get behind.
Yeah, let's get to some of those comments. Lots to talk about today. What a day for Derek to be off, Chris. Maka says, Big Phil and Proper in central defence tomorrow. Robert Piercy, brilliant news. Showed he's not just here to get himself a job elsewhere. Alan says, our best signing. Neil, delighted with that, to be fair. Christopher, a welcome positive for the start of the season. Two things that stand out to me, Chris. Number one is the fact that you're right. Clement still does, of course, have stuff to prove. The fact that I think there are style of play questions. I think we need to give him time with players who suit his style and remember the situation he inherited to properly judge that. The injuries obviously came into the fall-off last season, but fall-off was still pretty dramatic. One of the noises that you heard consistently, though, when he was appointed the job was this line that he said in his interview, was the fact that his most important title was not the first one that he won at Club Brugge, but it was the fact that he won it again because it showed that winning could, I guess, become a habit at the club and it wasn't just about a one-off. He's someone who rejected more money to other clubs to go to Rangers, and I think it is quite what you see on the tin in terms of he wants to be at a club where the passion really matters. He wants to be somewhere where he can build. He said a few weeks ago where there was that comment about the reality of selling before you can buy. And he caveated that answer by saying, but I really want to rebuild the club. I really want to be part of it. Now, that you can't allow a manager to rebuild a club totally in his image, because Rangers have done that too much in recent seasons, and then it ends up in this squad building mess that we are in, the Rangers are in this summer. But you do need consistency, I guess, in any company, football club, to make it successful. And certainly on that point of Clement wanting to be here, backing up what he said about wanting to rebuild the club, that's real vindication of that fact, isn't it?
I think people have been looking at, certainly before the last couple of signings, people have been a bit more downbeat in terms of their view of how the season will go. And it's been said to us more than one occasion, you know what's going to happen. They'll lose the first Old Firm game, they'll be out of Europe, and come October, November, we're back in this managerial cycle. That's something that the board are determined is not going to happen this time around, because they know the football and financial cost of that over the last couple of seasons. At some point, Rangers have to find a way of breaking this cycle. That's not to say that you keep managers on who are not up to the job. That's not to say that you give managers more money to throw good money after bad. But they clearly feel that Clement has done enough, and there's enough in his vision for the club to go all in, to coin the John Bennett phrase, to go all in on him. It's a big statement of intent to give him that contract. We assume now that there will be further deals in terms of rebuilding the squad. There will be more money there, or not perhaps more, but there will be money there to do the work that the manager has to do. And he has mentioned a couple of times, it's not really been picked up on a lot because there's been so much else on the go and so many other talking points. But he's mentioned in the odd press conference and the odd interview about rebuilding the academy and signing players for longer term and trying to think bigger picture. And it's easy to think bigger picture when you don't have any pressure on you. To think bigger picture, well, there is that demand to win every game, to win every trophy, to take the club forward all the time. That's a big job on your hands. Manager seems up for it. Clearly feels that he's the man to oversee that. But I think if you look at every area of the club, there is huge scope and room for improvement. So I say the board clearly feel that Clement, alongside Neil Scoppin, obviously as a director of football recruitment, they clearly feel the structure is now there to end this cycle that started with Gio and then continued with Michael Beale. If Rangers end up back in that cycle in a few months' time, this looks a really, really silly call. If Rangers have got a couple of shiny things in the trophy room come the end of the season, this looks like an inspired decision.
I remember this was in a piece that I wrote, I think, at the time when Clement arrived at the club, and it was someone who'd worked on his backroom staff previously, and he said, so he obviously has worked pretty consistently as a manager since he retired as a player, and he obviously he calls himself as a football addict, as a phrase he uses, someone who's probably not shy of going into the office. And they said that when he had that 6-month period off, he effectively treated it like he was still in work. So he'd have meetings every 3 or 4 days with his staff team. He was looking at clubs and leagues where he could potentially go to work. So a number of leagues across Europe, and taking notes on players or teams or styles or leagues. And the person said to me, instead of kind of just going playing golf for 5-6 months, it was all about that self-development, self-improvement, which is just, I think, an interesting insight into I guess the type of person he is, the focus he puts on his man management. I'm going to put a bit of a devil's advocate opinion to you here, Chris. I mean, we have this opinion from Scott Swelder saying Rangers need to stop twisting with managers. Clement is a proven winner, and that's true. You cannot have a short-term vision to solve a long-term problem. And I think for the last few seasons, Rangers have had a short-term vision to solve a long-term problem that goes back to when they last won the league, and the ways that the table has turned since then, and their inability to kind of claw it back and getting close, instead of looking at the root of the issue and trying to think, okay, this might not be solved in 2 months, but it will be definitely solved down the line. And giving a manager a 4-year contract solves that. Clement's won titles at previous clubs. I think a lot of people would give him a bit of grace with the injuries he suffered in the last 3 months of the season. You know, in the Scottish Cup final, I think he had 7 players out. He's playing a fullback on the right wing, and he's playing a forward on the left wing. The other side of it, though, Chris, is that if Rangers season is to start badly and things aren't to go well, there's no guarantee of success, is there? And we've seen that over the past few years at Ibrox. So there's obviously a risk to this deal as well, because it is really backing your horse, so to speak. Do you think that's just par for the course, that Rangers have went so far to one extreme in the last few seasons? They're a club that does not have a history of hiring and firing, that this is a movement back in the other extreme to make sure that there is consistency in the dugout, even if it does take time for Rangers to get back to where they want to be?
I think it is certainly one extreme to the other, as you say. As I mentioned earlier on, I don't think there's a massive clamour for the manager to get a new contract. Out of all the deals that people were expecting to be announced on a Friday morning, the manager signing up for another 4 years was not one. I don't think there has been this groundswell of Clement is definitely the man. He has to be given a new contract. People can think he is the right man, but they weren't saying like go and give him extended terms. So it's quite the move from the board. As I mentioned there, if there's a title and a cup and some European progress in there come the end of the season, they can turn around and say, well, we stuck to our word, we backed the manager, we knew he was the right person, and it's all been delivered. If the other side of that, as we all know, season doesn't start well, European Old Firm game, people then say, well, why are we giving a manager a 4-year contract? Why is this happening? Why is that happening? So it is, yes, it's a show of faith, but it's also a big risk. Now, people will be asking questions over the timing of it. But it is a confirmation, I feel like, of the board's faith in Clement and Clement's willingness to see this job through. Now, he has mentioned that it's not a short-term quick fix at Rangers, but ultimately, if you want to mould the club in your image, if you want to be here for the long term, you need short-term success. He will not get the 4 years to go and win one league title. Now, people have mentioned that point regarding Steven Gerrard. That was a point that came up on the show a couple of weeks ago. Why doesn't he get the same time that Steven Gerrard got? Very, very different set of circumstances, very different circumstances that the manager's walking into. That Steven Gerrard was the only Rangers manager that will get that amount of time. Thankfully, it paid off. Clement will not get that time. If he doesn't win the league this season, questions will be asked over his future, regardless of how long he's got on his contract. People will say he didn't win the Scottish Cup. He was in a great position to win the title last season and couldn't see it for whatever reason, a variety of reasons. He couldn't see it over the line. People will ask questions if this doesn't go well.
Yeah, let's get to a few more comments before we sign off. Jake Donovan, let's not be negative about this. Any contract is a risk. Let's get behind the gaff for Headkeeper. He's a football man and has taken Rangers to his heart. Needs backing from the board. Iron Blue, I'm pleased with this news. It's a big positive going into the new season. A few negative voices as well. Or I think rather than negative, I think understandably, Chris, there's still stuff to be proved, isn't there? Proven, and when you're signing a 4-year contract, that's going to be natural. One thing you would say about Clement is that he was able to very quickly unite and the Rangers support in a way that seemed pretty improbable when he came into the club. The last couple of months of the season were really bad from a performance point of view, and that's why I guess it really reiterates our point just as we come to a close that tomorrow is really important because the start of a season signifies things. It sets the tone. People will want to see their questions about style of play addressed. People will want to see that even if Rangers squad is not where it could be, that it's still enough to win games at the moment. As if we needed another narrative to take us to Tynecastle tomorrow. That adds an extra little incentive and an interesting storyline to the day, doesn't it?
Adds a storyline at a time when we are not short of storylines. Now it's been quite the summer for Rangers, not just because of the players that have left, the players that have been linked, the players that haven't got over the line. You've then got the iBooks issue. You've got the issues of people, people questioning the board, people questioning the manager. There is so many different narratives at play regarding Rangers, but that's what keeps us busy. That's what keeps us coming back every morning to try and get to the heart of it all and try and get to the trying to go through it all. So now, Tynecastle tomorrow, as I said again, right at the start of the show, if you're not optimistic or if you're not looking forward to it, you're in the wrong game. Now, this day one, as we saw last season, I think people were optimistic heading down to Rugby Park. After that game at Rugby Park, we all had varying degrees of questions to ask. Rangers, it's a great chance for them tomorrow, as you say. Go to Tynecastle, gets the season off to a good start. But there's a lot of football to be played. So let's not say yes, definitely they'll win the league. I don't think you can say that they will. I don't think you can say they definitely won't. The first few weeks, I think, will definitely shape the narrative, shape the mood amongst the squad and the mood amongst the Rangers fans.
Yeah, my tuppence worth as we close is that I think there is questions about style of play, etc., but if you don't give anything time, it's not going to work. Clement has won league titles before. He knows how to win. I think you see quite clearly that he has the statesmanship to manage a big club like Rangers, and he needs time probably to make what has been a difficult situation at the club right. It's a bold decision, but I guess bold decisions are required, aren't they? And it's going to be intriguing to see what happens next on this season. Right, it's been a long morning briefing. We're going to go because I'm sure we're all boring you by now. We'll be back slightly later on the members channel to break down the press conference. Should be a few talking points from that. But until then, thank you very much for joining us. Loads of Rangers content to come your way over the weekend. You know where to get it all. Remember to subscribe to the website and download our free app if you've not done so already. Until then, thank you to Chris. Thanks for joining us, and we will speak to you soon. Bye for now.